Decentering men is not about hating men. It's about putting yourself first at the center of your own life. You are not the supporting character in your own story. I need you to start acting like the main character, and I need you to start doing it today, okay? They're the supporting character at the end of the day. Hello, and welcome back to the EmpowerHER Podcast. I'm going to paint a picture for you. I would wake up at 6 a.m. every day. I did not need to get up that early on my own to go to work, but I woke up at 6 a.m. every morning so that I could make eggs, bacon, toast for my boyfriend at the time. Not because he asked me, although I do think it was expected, and it wasn't because I actually wanted to. It was because somewhere along the way, I decided that his comfort, his happiness, and his potential reaction was more important than my own sleep or my own wants and needs. Now, something else I would do in this relationship was if I went away, for example, I went back home to visit my family in California for 2 weeks, I prepped food for him, froze it, wrote on the Ziploc exactly how he should cook or reheat whatever it was, as well as what he could eat it with before I went away. Now, in that relationship, this was a 4-year relationship. I was with him from when I was 21 to 25. He was 10 years older, just as a little tidbit. I spent my extra time on his needs. I lost sleep, I lost energy, I lost confidence. I spent time wondering what he wants, what he needs. Is he going to be happy with this? What are his finances looking like? Because his finances weren't great, so I was trying to help him save money. That was my excuse for doing everything for him. And that was my life for the 2 years that we lived together. 2 years we didn't live together. And then 2 years we lived together. And I thought this was normal. I was like, this is what I saw at home. My mom, didn't work and she did everything in the house for my dad who worked. And I was like, oh, this is normal. This is love. This is what a partnership is. It wasn't love. It was self-abandonment dressed as devotion. So I want to talk about what centering men actually costs you as a woman. Now, obviously, we're talking about heterosexual relationships in this context, but even in friendships as well. So I want to talk about if you are a woman and you are centering men in relationships, what you could lose out on and what it's costing you. First is your sleep, right? Because you're waking up early to tend to their needs or to do chores around the house because they won't do it. You are losing confidence because your emotional state depends on how your partner is acting toward you, whether they text you, whether he's happy, fed, whether he feels good, whether you're hanging out with his friends, right? He becomes kind of the center and you stop trusting yourself because you're too busy trying to read him. It costs you your time. You spent so much time thinking about him, doing things for him, doing extra things around the house, right? We know what the mental labor looks like for women and how much they take on, analyzing, replaying conversations, preparing, accommodating. That is so much mental time and energy that you can't get back. It costs you your nerves. So the anxiety of not knowing where you stand in a relationship, constantly having stress, trying to manage someone else's emotional state, trying to anticipate their needs, your nerves go haywire, right? And underneath it all, you lose your sense of self at the end of the day. Who you were when you weren't organizing around a man's presence and potential presence. And I, for a long time, didn't know who I was because in that relationship and the one after that, I catered to what they wanted. My relationship after that was very much about, I didn't want him to feel emotionally, stressed. So I just tried to take everything on. I never told him when something was wrong. I was always keeping everything in. And I tried to make sure he felt good about everything. So it's interesting because I've never been someone to put men before my friends. but I always put men before myself. And that's what was interesting. I had a situation when I was in college. One of my good friends, she was my best friend at the time. We were going to like, a friend's house just to drink, hang out, all the things. And she drove. So I went with her. And there was this guy that I had been on and off, seeing whatever. We were never official, but we were on and off for 2 years. We were friends before that. It was a whole thing. Anyways, he was going to be there. We knew that. And I wasn't sure if he would want to hang out with me afterwards, or if I didn't know what kind of place we were in at that moment of like, is that something that, we would want to do? But this was totally separate, or I don't know if she had any ulterior motives, but, she drove and it was a little bit of a drive. It was probably like a 30-minute drive from where we lived. And she made me promise, she was like, promise me that no matter what, at the end of the night, you'll come home with me. And I was like, okay, sure. I didn't think anything of it. I promised her that I would go home with her again. I didn't think anything was going to happen with this guy anyways. So it was like, whatever, like, I'll go home with you. And it turned out that the guy was there, and he did, when we were leaving, he asked me if I would stay. And I wanted to stay so bad because, I wanted to have my needs met, so to speak. And I wanted to spend time with him and flirt with him and do all the things. And looking back, I thought it was really selfish of my friend that she asked me that. Like, I didn't understand, like, why I needed to, like, sit in the car with her on the way home. Like, she could just drive home. She was sober. Like, she'd driven many times before. It was her own car. Like, it wasn't a situation. But I went home with her. Even though it hurt me to emotionally to not, get some time in with this man. But that was normal for me. I always chose my friends over a man. I was never choosing men over. But what I didn't choose is myself. And that was kind of where the problem was, is I would choose friends over a man, but I would choose a man over myself. So the theme for me was I was always choosing other people besides myself. And this is where, centering men came into play there. And this shift of moving from centering men to decentering men did not happen overnight. Okay. I was in 2.5 years of therapy. I did all the things. Like, when I was in therapy, I really had to decenter, because I went to therapy coming out of a really bad, like, relationship situation. And I just got to a point where I was like, I don't know why I'm constantly in these relationships with these men. And we really had to unpack that in therapy, of why I was choosing the certain type of man over again. I wasn't asking for what I want. I didn't even know what it looked like to ask for what I want. I didn't even know what I could ask for. Like, my therapist literally had to say, like, it's normal to ask for this. It's normal to ask for that. And I was like, what? It was like she was speaking a different language to me. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So it was very eye-opening, especially because I grew up with women around me that centered men. And so that's all I saw. And I didn't know any different. And I had to recognize that pattern and say, okay, this isn't working, right? Therapy helps me break down that programming that I had from the way I grew up, from society, from the patriarchy. And I had certain beliefs about what it meant to be a good partner, what it meant to be a desirable woman, what it meant to be a loving presence, right? I had seen that across the board with, my mom, my grandmas. Like, it was always catering to the man, cooking, cleaning, doing all these things. And I thought that that's what I had to do in order to be loved, in order to be in a good relationship. And basically, I felt like my value was connected to how well I took care of someone else. I was always the caretaker, taking care of someone else. I'm also an eldest child, parentified, all the things. So just like many, many layers on it. But I felt like if I stopped accommodating, anticipating, and organizing around a man's needs, I thought he would leave. And you know what? My one boyfriend, who the one before my husband, who I never told him what was wrong, when I started telling him what I needed, he did break up with me because he couldn't handle it anymore. And, we got back together and whatever a couple of times after that, and he, came after me, but that's a different discussion. I really had to, once I stood up for myself, he wasn't capable of giving me what I wanted, and we had to end our relationship. And that was really a turning point for me to understand of like, oh, well, if he can't give me what I need, then like we can't be together, And when I met my husband, I had come off of 2.5 years of therapy. I was single for a year and a half. Like, I had done the work, right? And I was a different person. And it wasn't because I was perfect or had done everything perfectly or I'd healed every single wound, right? But I had done the work and knew myself well enough to show up as my authentic self, someone who could set boundaries, someone who could say what she really wanted. And that version of me was interested in that person. And he was also interested in me, and he was okay with those things, right? And that changed everything about how our relationship dynamics started. It was way different than any of my other relationships and how we got into it. And I never ended up catering to him the way I had done previously. So I want to talk about what decentering men actually looks like, specifically in a happy marriage, which is what I live in. Because I know we often talk about it as like in general decentering men when we're single, not making them a priority, not dating, etc. But what about if you're married or in a relationship with a man? How can you decenter them while still have a happy relationship? And this is the part that people don't expect, and especially when I say this or when people see, they're like kind of surprised that I do this, but it really works for us. And again, like, I am happily married. I have a strong relationship. I love my husband. He's my number one priority, but I decenter him. I openly decenter him. I consciously decenter him, and he knows it, and he's fully in support of it. So what does it actually look like? I go on vacations with friends, and I don't have to ask him for permission, right? Yes, I coordinate with him about when we're going on vacation or when we're doing things or what's going on. Of course, I coordinate and we talk about it, but I don't have to ask him permission to go on vacation. And I do go on vacation with my friends. I also prioritize my friends' birthdays and accomplishments. Like, when my friends have birthdays or things going on or we just want to hang out, like, I'm there for that. And that's priority to me. And that's important to me. I show up for the women in my life despite, or, even though I'm married, I should say. I also put myself first. So I no longer put the person I'm with before myself. I put myself first, then him. Okay. And it's not because I don't love him. And it's because I finally understand that I can't really love him if I'm not loving myself and if I'm abandoning myself. And again, like, when I make plans, like, I absolutely consider him. But at the end of the day, if I want to do something, I'm going to say what I want or do what I want to do. Again, I'll coordinate, we'll ask, we'll talk about it. It's not like we're not communicating. We are over communicating. But I'm also not letting him decide or tell me what to do in terms of what I wear, how I dress, how I show up. All of those things, like, I do what I want to do, right? Also, I'm in a phase in my life right now where work is a priority. My priority is my career. He gets home at 5 p.m. I'm typically working till 7 or 8 p.m. and I don't really see him or speak to him in those 3 hours that he's gotten home, and I'm still working. And he knows that. It's a priority for me. And he's not telling me, oh, you should stop working or stop working so hard. No, he doesn't say that to me. He doesn't make me shrink, okay? He doesn't do that. Instead, he builds me podcast backdrops so that I can be more successful. That's what my husband does for me. And the thing that I think nobody tells us is that if you're with a secure attached man, a securely attached man, someone who's secure, your marriage will be better by you detaching him, right? Like, decentering him. We have a great marriage. We have, I would say, a happy marriage. Of course, we have our own conflicts and all of that. That's normal. But he is okay with me doing my own thing and me being ambitious. And that's always been super important to me. And at the end of the day, women have been taught that centering men means that we love them, that organizing our life around someone else's needs, moods, and presence is devotion. We've been taught as women that the more you give, the more you accommodate, the more you anticipate, the more lovable you become, right? And we're always told that the relationship is the end goal. So of course we think that that's what we want. But at the end of the day, that's not love. That's performance, and it is fucking exhausting. It's exhausting. And so when you decenter men, it's not that you're becoming cold or closed or unavailable. You're just becoming yourself. You're putting yourself first. And you bring that self into your relationships instead of disappearing inside of those relationships. And I see this time and time again, like with my friends. The women who struggle most in these relationships are not the ones who are too independent or too focused on themselves. They're the ones that completely and utterly lose themselves in their relationships. Their partner isn't giving them what they need. They don't ask for what they need. And it just really creates this negative cycle. And again, like, I truly want to emphasize, like, decentering men is not about hating men. Although, like, I am a misandrist to some degree. I obviously love my husband, but like other men, I don't know. It's not about leaving your husband or your partner or checking out of the relationship. It's about putting yourself first at the center of your own life. So if you're someone that wakes up early to make breakfast for someone who didn't ask, if you're preparing foods before vacation, if you are canceling your plans with your girlfriends to be with your man, if you're losing sleep over why he didn't text you or what he said or whatever it is, if you're spending your energy managing someone else's emotions who's not your child, this is your sign to decenter the man or men in your life. Not because you're trying to be someone else, just so you can come back to yourself. Put yourself first. Put your friendships first. Build your work. Prioritize your work. Prioritize your self-care. Do what you want. Move to the new city. Consider him, but choose yourself. Consider him, but always choose yourself first, okay? You are not the supporting character in your own story. I need you to start acting like the main character, and I need you to start doing it today, okay? They're the supporting character at the end of the day, all right? I hope this was inspirational. If it was, and if you liked the episode, 5 stars would be truly appreciated, as well as subscribing. Hope you all have an amazing week, and I'll catch you in the next episode.